Time on AM Live when we take a look at what is contained on and in the dailies. On the front page of the Daily Nation, talks team in near fisticuffs. And actually, I have failed to do something that actually would have served me better. And that is introduce the panelists I have in studio so that when I call on them, you know who is speaking. We have Jim India, political analyst. We also have Gashri Kariuki in studio. And Gashri is not only an advocate of the High Court, director, Ustawi KE, and National Organizing Programs Director, Interparties Youth Forum. We expect Kidi Mwaga in a short while. He is the convener, Interparties Youth Forum. And we also expect in studio this morning, guys, who am I forgetting? Nurdin Hagai, advocate of the High Court as well. Okay, Kenya Kwanza rejected Azimio's make or break interim demands. Talks team in near fisticuffs. The ongoing negotiations between President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga to resolve the 2022 post-election crisis yesterday degenerated into a shouting match, which almost broke into a fist fight amid a major split between the warring camps. Let's flip over to page 4 for more detail. Although Ibrahim Karanja, you did hear that top story this morning filed by Ibrahim Karanja, but this is what it reads like in the dailies, and this is by Moses Nyamori and James Murimi. The ongoing negotiations between President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga to resolve the 2022 post-election crisis yesterday degenerated into a shouting match amid a major split between the opposing camps. This even as President Ruto's team rejected interim demands, including lowering the cost of living. Mr. Odinga forcing the talks team to refer the contentious issues back to the technical committee. And let me just read my hard copy here so that I can pull this down. There we go. I think that's better. All right, so where were we? Paragraph 3 here. Mr. Odinga's team only succeeded in his demands to have security details of Azimio La Umoja, One Kenya coalition party leaders withdrawn following anti-government protests reinstated, Nation can reveal. Yesterday's meeting that lasted for about 2 hours was characterized by grandstanding and bitter verbal exchanges between Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni and East African Legislative Assembly member Hassan Omar. Mr. Omar is said to have berated Kioni for his recent remarks at a press conference that the talks appear designated to fail. This triggered a bitter exchange between the two that lasted for a few minutes before they were stopped by the co-chairs, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka and National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah. And it is true, as you heard in that phone recording that Ibrahim Karanja played for us, Mr. Kioni did indeed confirm the incident while describing Mr. Omar as condescending. He later stormed out of the meeting, declining to join the team for a press briefing. Accounts of the incident was corroborated by another participant in the talks. Yep. So what do you guys make of this? Jim, I'll start with you. It was interesting for me to witness the press conference that Kioni and Martha Karua held. And Kioni said that if he were the coalition leader, he would have backed out of his talks on account of the increase in fuel. And he said the reason maybe the cost didn't go up last month is because, or rather was subsidized, if that is contentious, was subsidized, is to keep the peace until the Africa Climate Summit was over, and then this what do I call it? Bomb. So your thoughts on this?
So obviously, Kioni and Martha Karua are doing what most politicians do. When you want to bolt out of a place, you need to create a crisis. And we've seen them front a new wing. I think it's called Kamwene. Yeah, Kamwene. It's a new leadership front. Of course, I don't think it's that new. I think it's the branding that is new. But it's same old, same old. And sometimes you just need to engineer enough heat within your party to prepare for your ball, that when you eventually leave, there's enough earthquake that's following you as you leave. But beside that, I think that was, to say that nothing will come out of these talks is, from where I see it, is true. Because if you look at a lot of the agenda that they're talking about, there are things that are meant to happen. The restructuring of the IBC will happen. That's a requirement of the law. It will happen. The things around cost of living, we all know that it has been pushed to, I think it's now Agenda 5 or Agenda 4 of those plans. There's no silver bullet to solving the economy. No amount of bipartisan committees, no amount of will sort out our economy as it is right now. And so the fistfights that we are seeing, the bickering, these talks were always meant to satisfy the egos of the political elite. That's why you hear Kalonzo say, leave that to us. We will figure it out. This was never a people-to-people moment. This was never a mwananchi moment. This was always about the political leaders not happy about the outcome of an electoral process and deciding that they can have other ways of forming gangs among themselves, and then these gangs going at each other. And it is just a gang fight among the political elites that we are seeing. And one way or another, they will trade in, and there will be a lot of trade-ins. And the silence that we are seeing from, the different coalition leaders is because a lot of trade-ins have already occurred. But also remember, in the grander scheme of things, these political leaders, especially the coalition leaders, they do not necessarily serve the interests of Kenyans. They serve their personal interests. And a lot of times the interest of foreign powers. And that can be seen in, like you're saying, the African Climate Summit came and everybody was very cordial with each other. Everyone was shaking hands with each other because we know the guests are here. The people who pay us are here, so let us behave ourselves. You see it in how many foreign trips both of those two leaders make in and out of the country. And so these talks were never really about us as a people.
Two things, Jim.
Yes.
One, you said the people who pay them. Who came that pays them? Two, the question, are you telling us these talks are going nowhere after people have lost their lives?
Yes, these talks are not going to yield. If there's any Kenyan who is betting their life on these talks, then I've got news for you. Stop it. Just bet your life on making a proper decision in 2027.
All right. Or
bet your life on holding your leaders accountable and doing a good job of doing the accountability work between now and 2027. Because these leaders, and we've spoken about this before, we do not have any evidence from the past that any time that leaders, because these talks always happen, right? 97, and these guys told us the other day in their press conference, 97, there was the IPPG. In 2002, there was the NAC coalition government. In 2000, so there's always something that is bringing people. There's always a talk that we're trying to do, and every time that these talks happen, it is always a leader being promoted. It is always a leader getting demoted. It is always a few tribes getting government jobs. It is always a leader wanting to control certain government institutions. Never ever does it trickle down to, okay, we have people who lost their lives. Even up to recently in 2017, we had many who lost their lives. But as soon as we had the handshake government, not once did we hear any of those guys talk about, hey, we have babies who were killed in this protest. We had individuals who lost their lives. Where are the reparations for them? So if there might be a crisis, a political crisis in Kenya, but it will never be solved by politicians. They've proven that they can't do it, and they're not willing to do it. I
mean, Gashwi, this is of course firmly in our court today, because what we're discussing is how these political divisions impact the youth, especially given clearly the unemployment crisis that we're facing. You represent a constituency that is asking, okay, what is there in these talks for us? But again, to the question of people died, and yet we've had people from both camps, senior people, saying these talks will yield nothing out of this world.
I think it's tragic. It's very sad that some of the issues that should have been paramount in these conversations were never there, from the economic crisis to police brutality, to Kenyans losing their lives and no one ever being held to account. We have seen the same in 2017, we saw the same in 2007. We have never seen a conviction of even one government official or just anyone who was involved in this violence being convicted. That was something that I initially thought would be included in this conversation as far as the national dialogue is concerned, and it is very sad to see that that is not there. The issue of economic crisis, the issue of cost of living not being in these talks is also a very huge concern. But nonetheless, having a chance to have a conversation is very, very important. Whether it's politicians, whether it's other stakeholders, I think it's very important for all of us to have an opportunity to sit down talk to each other, address issues as they are, and find a way to forge a way forward.
All right. Kilimwaga Karibu, convener, Interparties Youth Forum. You had wanted a seat at this table in a Kahindo jumping castle because they're acting like juveniles, from where I see it, from how I see it. But again, the same question I've posed to Gashu. You have Ndindi Nyoro, the Deputy President, Jeremiah Kioni now from Azimio, all saying, don't expect much. And yet, people marched and people died.
Thank you very much, Polly, for having me on the show. Of course, I come with a lot of greetings from the land of gold, Migori Republic. Yes, we are in a sad situation because we are treating the national dialogue as a political pressure valve. Because you remember that Kenyans were frustrated by the high cost of living. And the opposition then, seeking to litigate grievances of a lost election, decided to conveniently take advantage of that, of the high cost of living, and call for mass action. And now Kenyans turned in large numbers spontaneously across the country to express their displeasure. The political actors, in their wisdom or lack of it, then decided to form the national dialogue. For people who look at our country through the prism of eternal optimism, we thought and believed legitimately that the national dialogue then would present a chance for us to genuinely interrogate our governance issues. On this show, Oliver, I told you that the challenge with the previous elite pact settlements was that they concerned themselves more with the question of whom rather than what should be done. And it is not any different now, because people, actors, again, players within the political space, who of course ended up in the national dialogue, and other forces without the national dialogue, are trying to look at who will get what when the national dialogue succeeds, and who will not get what when the national dialogue does not succeed. And so I will say that we have heard of murmurs of deliberate sabotage of the national dialogue process. On this show again, I mentioned that as young people were seeking to be included, we were aware that the political actors may think that we do not add value to their process, and therefore we shall continue to hold a parallel national dialogue within and among the young people to ask the fundamental questions that we need to ask. For instance, the question of cohesion and integration is a question we've not answered ourselves to comprehensively from 2007. I'm saying 2007 because in 2008, when we had Serena talks, we had what was called the Agenda 4. Agenda 4 has either not been implemented at all, or has been implemented in such a haphazard manner that it has failed to achieve what it was intended to achieve. For instance, we had the NCIC that was supposed to engender national cohesion. You know that today, if we can have mass action, you would see ethnic and political temperatures going up, and in places where people from different political persuasions or ethnic backgrounds live, you'd realize that those ethnic tensions would go up. So we've got our work cut out for us, particularly as young people, that for so long we have looked for a savior elsewhere. But I think now the savior is the person in the mirror. And this is now I'm speaking to young people, that we have now got to step up and seek how do we answer these fundamental governance questions that we are, as a country, have grappled with for so long and never gotten a cure for. Thank you.
All right. So how do you move from pawns to, I don't play chess,
to actors?
But this is how the Standard puts it. Ruto Raila caught in succession fight. President and ODM leader have been forced to wade into supremacy battles on who wears regional shoes, and the fights are getting ugly. And this is Moses Kuria quoted as stating, "For me, all parts of Kenya are useful, but the mere fact that the products that you have that can contribute to our jobs, to our foreign exchange, to our national GDP, everybody in this country is a shareholder." Image of the president there Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga on one side. So there is that, I don't know that call it a spat between the Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria and the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, and this was the sarcastic tweet that Moses Kuria posted, saying he has been accused of arrogance. It was a sorry, not sorry type apology. You know what I mean? So that's one of the fights. Looking at the Ministry of Water, we have a PS and a CS at cudgels over the suspension of the Athi Water Agency boss. So kuna vita 10 then in Azimio, we see Martha Karua, Jeremiah Kioni holding their own press conference, talking about Kamwene. So what's happening? But let's take a look at what else is contained in the dailies. That is the Standard, the Star. This is the front page. Let me load it up here. And as I do that, People Daily front page headline: Leave us alone, TSC tells Munavu. Teachers' employer wants National Assembly to throw out recommendations of task force on education review on recruitment, promotions and training of tutors. Says it is against the law. Quote here, the recommendation has the effect of restructuring employment opportunities for teachers and altering the registration requirements. This is Nancy Masharia at the very top here. Kosgei reads Riot Act to civil servants. That is on page 2. Debt crisis jitters as $2 billion Eurobond set to mature. The unease has been further exacerbated by conflicting statements from key state officials on plans to retire the bond. Healed Westgate terror attack survivors recount ordeal. It's been 10 years. It was 10 years as of yesterday. The Star should be open now. Here we go. And this is the headline: Pressure to fire. Ruto to face UDA top brass. NGC to meet next week amid push for president to overhaul his executives. And again, an image here: Westgate top flight security as Kenya marks 10th anniversary. Let me see, what else am I missing on the front page here? Okay, I will leave this there. Let us see. Taifa Leo I haven't mentioned, but this is the front page. Ukatili wa mke mwenza. Polisi katika eneo la Kachaliba, kaunti ya Pokot Magharibi, wanamsaka mwanamke aliolewa hivi majuzi ambaye anadaiwa kuwateketeza watoto watatu na wake wenza Jumapili usiku. An image here of that. Mwaliko wa mwinjilisti wazua gumzo. This is Benny Hinn, who said the First Lady and her team flew all the way to Orlando to invite him for a national-sponsored crusade. Your thoughts coming up shortly. Let me see. I think I will leave this here. What haven't we looked at? The Business Daily? Front page here: mega project financiers face tax break suspension. Treasury fallback plan revealed in IMF disclosures. Chinese lenders are likely to take the biggest hit. Zooming in here, the Treasury. There we go. The Treasury has hinted at suspension of tax waivers on the interest income earned by global financiers of mega infrastructure projects in what is likely to inflame tensions with various lenders, including Kenya's leading bilateral lender, China. Boost for banks as car buyers flock to auction yards, and Kenyans put off by a sharp rise in car import prices due to severely weakened shilling are flocking to banks' auction yards for cheaper units repossessed from loan defaulters, handing a boost to the lenders hoping to recoup their debt. And on the ticker this morning, Kenya's fuel prices 12th highest in Africa. Kenya now has the 12th costliest fuel in Africa, following a recent price review that increased pump charges by up to 21 shillings and 32 cents per litre. I&M Group founders to build a 3 billion shilling hospital, and shilling tipped to weaken further on low forex inflows. Lower foreign exchange inflows and higher global interest rates are the key factors that will see the Kenya shilling continue to lose ground against the US dollar, according to the data analytics and intelligence firm. Did I see Sears? Should be Sears, right? Okay. Steers, though, it reads, corrupt elites prefer systems where you can operate without a trail. accrual accounting leaves a transparent audit trail. This is by Jaindi Kisero. I think we've looked at pretty much everything. So we can firmly transition to our topic of discussion, although we already kicked off with the discussion about the conduct at the Bomas of Kenya during these talks, the National Dialogue Committee. Jim, you know, you say these talks will head nowhere, but the fact that they have not even been able to agree on the agenda,
Yeah.
that you say that feeds into that perception?
You see, the problem with politicians is that those in opposition see reforms as an opportunity to get into the next election. They see it as a wave to ride into the next election. And those in government see reforms as a bad thing, and so stall them as much as possible to stay in power. And because of those two things, they will rarely agree on reform issues. What they will agree on are deals. So you eternally have deal makers who are constantly striking deals in these boardrooms. Because even the closed nature of these talks, Olive, we cannot agree on the agenda items. When Kenyans were coming out to protest, and that's always been my question, I don't remember any Kenyan who was coming out to protest that they wanted the IBC reconstituted. I don't see any Kenyan who came out to protest and said that they wanted, the office of the leader of official opposition or the office of the prime cabinet secretary enshrined in the constitution. When majority of Kenyans came out to protest, like Kidi said, it was the cost of living that was the issue. And then take advantage of that and sneak in your own other agendas to use the people, and in this case, the young people, as a tool to then further your own agenda. It's selfish, and it calls out, it exposes these politicians for who they really are. When, you know, the government says that they were a hustler government, and the question that we ask ourselves is, who is hustling who? You know, when they said they were a hustler government, we thought that they were a government for the hustler. But I think what they meant was that they were a government that was going to hustle its people, because it is now the government that is hustling us. And when you have a government that is hustling its people, basically all the time nitoa uko na ngapi, all the time government inakuuliza unatuacha aje, you know, all the time the government saying, you know, untie us before you leave, all the time the government looking for opportunities to get something out of you. You cannot have a small meeting with the government without them asking you for tea, without them asking you for bread. So when you have that kind of situation where your government is constantly hustling you, and then you have an opposition that is also hustling the government that is hustling you. So the opposition is constantly asking the government, najua wamekuona, right? I know they have seen, I know they have given you something.
Yes.
And so, wananchi, you hustle left, right, and center. You are this cow that is being constantly milked. And you're being milked when the opposition sees that the person who hustled you is not giving them anything, then they call you to go to the streets. The same government that you're giving your taxes tear gasses you, the same government shoots you, the same government sprays water cannons at you. And so at one point, I hope that as young people will realize that we cannot do this Hail Mary with the political leaders. And we have to borrow back. In fact, we have to withdraw the sovereign power that we have donated to the leaders and have a people-to-people moment. Because this thing between leaders is not working. This dialogue between leaders is not working. Just withdraw the sovereign power that we've given to them, have a people-to-people moment, let us agree, and just say, wenzangu, we need a way forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gashri.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Jim, that was really good. In fact, Kidi just kept going, It was like he was in church. Karibu sana Nurdin Hagai, advocate of the High Court. we are firmly in the topic of discussion. Informed by this, talks teeter on edge as bickering among rivals deepens crisis. We're told yesterday an exchange between Hassan Omar, Jeremiah Kioni almost degenerated into fisticuffs because Jeremiah Kioni held a press briefing together with Martha Karua and said if he was the coalition leader, he would have backed out of these talks because clearly there is no good faith. And he said that is because of the increase further in the cost of fuel, and this is after the cost of living demonstrations, right, is what brought them to the table to begin with. So in his view, this was a walitemewa matikoso. But Gashri, it's not just, this is now, there seem to be factions within the factions, right? In Azimio, you have Kamwene Forum. Yeah. In Kenya Kwanza, you have the DP saying one thing out there, and Kimani Ichung'wah is telling us don't listen to people and what they say at Rurashios. Everybody seems to be speaking. So already if there are these divisions within the factions, how hopeful can we be?
I think Raila Odinga and William Ruto have an obligation now to call this to order. It's too chaotic. It's becoming a circus. It is upon them to call this dialogue to order, to call the leaders to order, and have them fall in line. Alternatively, like my brother states here, we can take back our sovereign power that we have donated to these leaders to represent and then make decisive decisions for us, and have a conversation amongst ourselves, dialogue amongst ourselves, and decide and forge a way forward for ourselves. But ultimately, I think there's still a chance. I believe there's still a chance. But William Ruto and Raila Odinga have to call their generals to order, their lieutenants to order, and hopefully steer the conversation forward and have solutions for the country.
Kidi Mwaga, sorry, I'm just trying to log into Twitter and look at some of those tweets on the subject. But Kidi, do you still want to be involved in these talks, given how they are going?
Olive, we cannot at any time afford pessimism. And therefore, when IPYF, the Inter-Party Youth Forum, an entity bringing together young people across the political divide, we felt that it was a golden opportunity for as a country to come together, and we wanted to buttress the goodwill therein and to make sure that we get it right. Remember that I was one of the earliest individual people who made pleas to both the political actors for quiet, direct diplomacy. But then, of course, as the talks are unfolding, you can clearly see that they have all the players therein have resorted back to the same old juvenile antics that we are sick and tired of. I also mentioned that Inter-Party Youth Forum is ready and willing to invoke all other channels available to them, including legal and political avenues. With the talks going as they are going, I think the Inter-Party Youth Forum will not hesitate to be a convener of the people-to-people dialogue that is then going to attempt to ensure that we move the arc of the moral universe towards justice.
All right, so we need to take a break, Nurdin. But first up, when we return, we'll have Nurdin Hagai's thoughts on the subjects. See you then.
This week on Daring Abroad. B360 is a full-service architectural, engineering, consulting, and logistics firm.
Find out how Peter Karenge and Alex Njoroge have made it in project management for big clients, including the US government.
We also serve the diaspora a lot, where we design and also build for them.
Also this week, turning plots into homes.
We are in apartments, we are in villas, and we are in bungalows back in Kenya.
How Naftali Mwangi's unique niche is attracting the diaspora market. And on our back home segment,
we are now doing a 5-week pre-departure training.
Increased governmental support for Kenyan migrant workers abroad.
It's Bata's birthday. Get a flat 15% off on all products in Bata stores countrywide. Offer valid on 21st September only. Come party with us. Terms and conditions apply.
Tulia ndugu, mimi ni Mungu wako. Tulia. Tulia mama. Yeah. Mungu wako. Tulia ndugu yangu. To get Tulia by Fred Omondi, dial star 812 star 798 hash. Skiza, non-nation.
Geriatric population is patients above the age of 65 years. They are a group of patients who we want to screen for certain conditions. For example, we want to do cancer screenings on them. We want to screen them for signs of early dementia.
What is, the biggest challenge, the biggest issues that you see mostly on geriatrics?
As you age, your muscles become weaker, your bones become weaker. Many other diseases accompany old age.
We tend sometimes also neglect our older family members, older patients, and sometimes that also stems from caretaker fatigue.
Caregivers themselves, and this is from a geriatrics point of view, do they know the needs of the geriatrics?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because in some settings we have some caregivers who are trained. Others are just working there because they want an income.
You're throwing money down the drain.
How? On these cleaning products? Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilet.
Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
Following the gazettement of Two Rivers as a private, services-focused special economic zone, the first one of the kind in Kenya, there is no better time to own a home at Two Rivers than now. Text the word Cascadia to 22365.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. With me in studio, we have Nurdin Hagai, advocate of the High Court, certified public mediator. We also have in studio Kiri Mwaga, lawyer, as well as convener, Interparties Youth Forum. Bado uko Kanu?
Yes, I am a convener of the Interparties Youth Forum. And I convene young people across the political divide. That way, I may want to be silent.
We also have in the studio Gashri Kariuki, and she is a director of Sawi KE Kenya. She is also advocate of the High Court and national programs. I got it right this time.
Yes, you got it right.
Coordinator, Interparties Youth Forum. We also have in-studio political analyst Jim. Jim, utaki kuongeza title?
No.
Uko sawa? As the household.
That's all you get.
All right. Nurdin Hagai, yes. Your thoughts on how these talks are going?
I don't want to use these words, but I told you so.
I knew from the get-go, this is what was going to happen. What are the talks about? Are they more about the Kenyans, or is it more about 2027, or is it more about certain interests that need to be taken care of? If it's about interests and the election that is coming, then this is what you're going to see. If the talks were centered on how to change the lives of Kenyans, it would be a very easy talk. It is conversation. Now, yesterday you had two sycophants fighting for their sides, all right? So they wanted to get into a fist fight because so that both camps can see, but then we have someone, either we have Merida or Tyson Fury in each side. So the sad reality is that we'll see this going on. I feel like the president and the former prime minister have had their conversations, and I think they have an agreement on some things. And maybe these talks are more or less just formalities so that those hardliners in their camps can find a way to fit in a certain agenda or discussion. And the discussion here, unless you're an alien in this country, they have plans to amend the constitution. And you can see. But now, the sycophants will always fight until they get a position on the table. My brother here wants to get into that messy water. I hope he doesn't get dirtied by that water. That is kiddie. Because at the end of the day, these talks, like I rightfully told you, are just pegged on interests. And so far now, the interests we see that haven't been catered for are those for the boys, for the boys who are around the two big men. So at the end of the day, I believe if they continue like this, I don't see the essence of having these talks. Because life, as it is getting worse. It's true, and Kioni says that life is getting worse. The increase in fuel, you know, it means everything goes up. And we've just been told today that the government wakes up every morning listening to Rick Ross' song, that is Every Day I'm Hustling. And so it's hustling Kenyans, thanks to Jim. So at the end of the day, you need to find a solution, which I don't see the talks coming up with one. Because they are pegged on IBC, that tells you 2027. They're pegged on interests that haven't been catered for. Maybe there's someone who wants some business somewhere in a party. So they are going to stall these talks until maybe they get whatever they want. But the sad reality is that Kenyans need to wake up. Unless you do, you'll have issues of what we saw, courtesy of the NYS, the many young men and women who are out there. Some call that a ticking time bomb. For me, I call it a nuclear, you know. And until the youth understand their power, like Jim tells us, they will always be there to be used to popularize parties. Because you know that's what happens. Someone forms a party and then gives you a youth wing to go make noise. You're the ones who wear the t-shirts, you're the ones who chant, you're the ones who are out there campaigning, but when they want to discuss, ngojeni hapa, tunakuja. So the youth have to decide whether they understand that politics is more or less about interests, and this interest is, what does electing a certain individual mean for my life and my future? The day they understand that, then the song by Chronics where he says, here comes trouble, here comes danger, here comes a Rasta youth will actually come to actually see what they're supposed to achieve. Until then, you'll always be seduced, misused, and abused every 5 years.
Seduced?
Misused and abused.
Okay. Jim, India, my understanding of you know, following the hike in the cost of fuel, unprecedented, highest ever, right? The sense I got from David D is that we have bigger fish to fry. So is there anything, like, speaking of the agenda of these talks, because Kenya Kwanza have taken the position that the Finance Act is in court, let the judiciary handle that. And the cost of living, addressing the cost of living is a long-term measure. It cannot be on the table. But can there be any people-centered talks if the cost of living is not at the center of these talks?
So as I've said, I don't think there's a silver bullet to the economy. Nobody thinks that. You know, Kenya Kwanza thought in David indeed they have a silver bullet. You know, like, and they used to brag about, look at our economic advisors, Oxford graduates, big people, big titles. And then these fellas showed up and now they're telling us, guys, it's bad. And I trust them when they say it's bad. I have no reason to doubt when they're saying that the economy, because if it was good, they would be shouting at the top of the mountains that things are good and things are going to look up. And you have the situation with the dollar, which as you can tell, from the early days when the president came into office, you know, and he gave this warning, you know, if you have dollars, your days are numbered, all that rhetoric. And the dollar just kept, the shilling just kept weakening every now and again. And as long as that happens, we'll keep buying fuel at a costly price. And as long as we do, because the cost of fuel across the world per barrel is depreciating. But because of how much the shilling is weakening, that's where we find ourselves. So, does anybody have a solution to how we strengthen the shilling? I think that's the work for the Economic Council to do. I will not even attempt to respond to that. That's the taxpayers' money to do. But when we are sitting down, if these guys are sitting down in these talks, and for some strange reason, maybe prayers from somewhere, maybe the crusades that are coming up or whichever, touches their hearts and they decide to actually think about the people and talk about the people. The only way that you then bring the cost of living conversation is, how do we cushion the people? That yes, things are bad, but there might be a way to cushion the people. They tell us that President Uhuru Kenyatta cushioned us for so long and now we are in a bad situation. Well, they can keep, sometimes you just need to postpone. There is always a formula to cushion the people. Subsidy is always an option. And I know that they have made subsidy to be such a bad word that we are not supposed to say that subsidy is an option, but subsidy is an option because if you're able to subsidize the cost of items for people, no matter where you're getting the money from, then that cushions your people because you do not increase the cost of living and you have high rates of unemployment. Those who are employed, they have stagnating salaries and paychecks, and you're taking more from those salaries and paychecks through taxes and whatnot. It comes to a point where it, you know, at some point it's not going, somebody's not going to give. At some point there'll be no more to give to this government. So they have to come up with a formula to ensure that you're able to cushion the people. But the brand of politics for both William Ruto and Raila Odinga, their brand of politics is a brand of politics that has instituted inequality in this country since they stepped their foot into politics. Okay. That is my position. I think they have done a good job of instituting inequality through the policies that they have fronted, through the way they have positioned themselves as kingpins of certain regions and certain people. And so I do not think that bridging the inequality gap is something that either of them prioritizes.
Okay. So TIFA did a poll, right? September 9th, 10th, I think. And this is what they found. Their findings. These are the findings. Support for Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja talks, 48% strongly support. So the question was, how much do you support the Kenya Kwanza and Azimio reconciliation talks? So 48% strongly support, 16% somewhat support, 4% somewhat oppose, 19% strongly oppose, 13% neither oppose or support. Success or likelihood of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio success likelihood of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja talks, 48% certain, very likely, 20% possible but not certain, 21% very unlikely but not certain, 11% not sure or no response. Likelihood that Kenya Kwanza will deliver promises if it reaches agreement with Azimio, 46% more likely, 38% less likely, 16% not sure, no response. So, support for the official leader of the opposition position, which is one of the things on the table. 45% strongly support. Impact of Raila's acceptance of official leader of the opposition position. 36% say it will make the opposition stronger. 48%, which is the majority, say it will make the opposition weaker. 16% say it will make no difference. And support for the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, 27% strongly support, so 27% strongly support, 15% somewhat support, 7% somewhat oppose, 31% strongly oppose, and 20% neither oppose or support. If the creation of these offices are to streamline governance, and if governance is ultimately the way to bring down, to make life more bearable, given the challenges that we are experiencing. Where do you fall here in these percentages, Gashri, Kariuki? If I was to ask you, let me find the questions here. I'll pose the same questions to you. But if I was to ask you, do you support? Do you Do you strongly, somewhat oppose, strongly oppose, neither oppose office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary? Just a quick fire one.
Strongly oppose.
Strongly oppose. Yeah. Okay, support for the office of the official leader of the opposition party? Strongly support, somewhat oppose, strongly oppose, neither oppose or support?
I do support the office of the leader of opposition.
All right.
Strongly or somewhat?
Strongly support. All right. Impact of Raila's acceptance of official leader of the opposition position 36. Okay, so will it make the opposition stronger, weaker, or make no difference?
No difference.
Really? No difference?
I support the idea of having an official leader of opposition and an office of the official opposition, but the character, our good dear Baba, at this point, I have lost faith.
Really?
I have lost faith.
Why?
Unfortunately. This was my leader in Azimio. He told us to go to come out in large numbers and go for mass action. We did. Kenyans died. Somewhat in the middle of it all, he decided, you know what? No, let's not protest anymore. And we were, as Jim had initially intimated, we were protesting as regards the issue of the cost of living for Kenyans, the high level of unemployment in this country. But somehow that never landed on the desk as far as the dialogue was concerned, as far as addressing people-centric issues was concerned. So when you ask me, Raila Odinga as the leader of official opposition, I hold reservations. Yes, right. I do hold reservations. And I think it's also a bit preposterous to bring up the issue of Chief Cabinet Secretary? Mudavadi's.
Yes.
Whatever Mudavadi is supposed to get from all of this. This is just a way of ensuring that he gets, you know, some level or a bit of influence and representation, but not necessarily political mileage. And insurance, exactly. But it's not about serving Kenyans. We're not talking about food insecurity. I've not heard any of them talk about food insecurity, which is actually a threat to sovereignty when you think about it. None of them is talking about the incoming El Nino crisis. I don't know if we're there yet or it's around the corner, but I cannot see any of these characters talking about the issue of El Nino, the issue of agriculture, the issue of educational reforms, the issue of stability in the country. So I think it's preposterous to even bring up the issue of a chief cabinet secretary when we have this crisis at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kirimwaga, what is at the root of these squabbles, do you think? Is this about succession? Because that is the case made by the Standard this morning. Ruto Raila caught in succession fight.
Olive, we are in a pure presidential system. One of the challenges with the pure presidential system is that it has got very little political pressure valves because you have very few people to reward at the top. When contrasted with the parliamentary system, you realize that more people have got greater space to be rewarded, and those people also have got the platform to peddle and wield influence. For instance, remember that people are saying that Grand Coalition government was the most effective. It was only effective because it brought in very many mouths into the feeding trough. So it means that there was very little chance for squabbling. Today, in September 2023, these offices, the office of the leader of official opposition and the leader of Prime Cabinet Secretary being entrenched in the Constitution is not a priority. However, it is a political imperative that we may have to grapple with in future, the same way we grappled with this question during the BBI process. I must tell you that the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics indicated that 3 months after the elections, the economy shed off 80,000 jobs. Of the most affected were between people within the ages of 20 to 29. Only what this has done is that it has increasingly weakened the institution of family in our society. When the institution of family is weakened in any society, it begins to bring in the question of the value system. It is in the family where values are instilled. So if the government is unable or unwilling to address itself very urgently to the question of the high cost of living, and other political players are also taking advantage of the high cost of living to engage Kenyans in political ping-pong, it underscores the sad political situation and socioeconomic situation that we are in. Growing up, of course, we knew, for instance, that religious objects were not supposed to be touched. It was sacrilege to play with them. Respect for parents and elder people in the society were values that were instilled in the family. When family is broken because people can, young fathers cannot be able to provide, and people are unable to set up family because of massive job loss, then I think the government is setting us up in a very dangerous trajectory. So I would again say that as much as the office of the leader of official opposition, the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary are things we may have to grapple with in eventuality. But I think in the here and now, we should have seen a joint effort by the Azimio and Kenya Kwanza in trying to alleviate the suffering of the people of Kenya. And there are examples out there. For instance, in 2008, when Lehman Brothers Bank went belly up and it set off the global financial crisis of 2008, Republicans and Democrats, in a bipartisan approach, came up together and enacted what was called the Economic Stimulus Act of 2008. Subsequently, what they did, they again came together to form what was called the Troubled Asset Relief Program. What these two did was that by the time, if you remember, President Obama was going to London in 2010, that US economy was already recovering ahead of all the advanced economies. So the question is, what has Azimio and Kenya Kwanza done to demonstrate to the people of Kenya that they are keen about alleviating the high cost of living? Remember when the Finance Act was in the House, you saw how we were told that some members of the Azimio were asked not to be in Parliament, others conveniently absented themselves, and you also saw how Kenya Kwanza bulldozed that act in spite of the constant plea from the people of Kenya that this act, this finance bill, if enacted as it is going to, exponentially increase the high cost of living, number one. Number two, it is going to lead to massive capital flight. Today, the president is in the US, and I have seen him trying to woo a lot of, companies to come and set up in Kenya. But it is going to be a challenge if the tax system we have around here does not incentivize investment. So I think that we are in this less than ideal situation, in part because of the lack of foresight of people we have put in power. Okay. And it is time that we must remind them. For instance, you have had... Kitty, let me say this. Let me say this. Let me say this because I know you want to bring in my brother Guy. You saw the apology from the Minister of Cabinet Secretary for Trade. I mean, that is someone who is certainly very oblivious of the impact, the human cost of his actions and utterances. Because what his utterances would lead to is one, instill fear in the citizens. And you know how fear can undermine a nation's capacity to enterprise. Thank you very much.
All right. So I have the apology. No, sorry, not sorry, apology. Here it is. Dear Kenyans, on Friday, 15th September, I made some comments indicating that the price of fuel is likely to go up in the coming months owing to global dynamics. That is not the only statement he made. You will remember he told us to jichimbie visima vyetu. I have since been advised by people like Dr. Boni Halwale and his master that the statement was incorrect, insensitive, and he puts in caps, arrogant, made to now understand that the price will come down. I apologize profusely since is human. I mean, there's some who argue he's simply being a truthful man. Following in the example set by Rigathi Gachagua. And then he changed tune. I think he took a dig with this tweet, a dig at the DP, because this was when he was in Siaya launching the parks, the industrial park, and he talked about development has no boundaries, and the Kenya Kwanza government will continue developing all parts of this country equally. To me, it read like a dig at the shareholder statement, right? Yeah. If they are treating each other with this contempt, Nasisi
you see, what's interesting is that, courtesy of the Daily, there's a report on succession. We have issues. You see, and this clearly tells even in UDA, mambo mechemka. Because at the end of the day, you have factions. They come from Mount Kenya together. So he sees himself as someone who can lead that side. Gachagua sees himself as the leader. There are those who are prompting Ndini Nyoro. There are those who subscribe to Kimani Ichung'wah. You go to Rift Valley, you're seeing Murkomen doing forays and doing, out of nowhere, Alfred Keter is back. You go to Western, Musalia is trying to assert, but there's Malala with his UDA telling him, vunja yo kiosk, kuja hapa. You go to Luo Nyanza, we have the Assemble leader who is the ICT minister, but he's the Assemble. He always meets people in Assemble Republic. He's more or less like the minister for Luo Affairs. You go the other way, there's a PS for Interior, who also sees himself as succession. There are issues of, and it all. So at the end of the day, his apology first and foremost, where he mentions even Khalwale, you know, that's a middle finger. There's no apology there. It's like Mtadu. And that's a lot of sarcasm. That tells you the rift in between. And we've been seeing stories about, there are rumors that he's been told to step aside and everything. But we don't know, because it's still a rumor. But at the end of the day, it's going to get interesting, because as time goes by, their real character is coming out. Now they're fighting in public. What they forget is that, you see, his handle is public. And when some things he writes there are those ministers from other countries who view that as maybe government position. You know, they need to understand that your level of communication is no longer just the way it used to be. If you are an MP back in the day, your level of communication and now being a minister is different, because at the end of the day, what you say is more or less like government position. So we are going to, Sifuna used to say that we are going to be embarrassed. We are used to it by now, because these people can't change, most of them, and that cabinet is made up of funny characters. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything we expect to change from Moses. This is Moses, and you take him as he is. So if there are fights, in the course of time, they will get that, yeah, or the territory will get murky, and we'll see whatever is going to happen. But what I just want to say is that if you don't have anything good to say, just don't speak. Because at the end of the day, there are some statements that he gave the other week, kama hiyo ya Kisima. See, there are those Kenyans who believed in the plan they gave. 100 days, 1 year, everybody will be in NHIF. Is it 1 year yet? And so many other promises. So at the end of the day, when you start speaking like that, the big man syndrome has clearly kicked in. So they need to understand that 4 years is a very short time. And if their plan is to constrain Kenyans and put them, because they tell us to tighten our belts. But the funny thing is that, how am I to a belt? Yesterday I saw the chief of staff, Felix, telling us, oh, he's complaining. Bro, you're complaining and doing nothing about it. Because at the end of the day, the largesse, the extravagance is there for everyone to see. So at the end of, if you don't have a belt, why are you telling me to put on a belt? We saw the issues on travel, how much you spend on travel, how much the expenditure is a little bit crazy. And Kenyans are suffering out here. People are getting disillusioned. Some are losing livelihoods. Some are getting depressed. And when you come across leaders who are meant to work for you, live in extravagant lifestyles, wearing Gucci, coming before you to actually address you. You know, some things are more or less like a slap in the face. You can do all those things, but fanya chini ya maji, you know. I think ubaya wengi wajui shenga. Eka tu chini ya maji, you know. Hata kama unafanya, hata kama wanahula, you know, just put it under wraps. Because at the end of the day, there are those people who actually believed in this government, voted for it, and now asking themselves, kwani tulijiweka wapi?
All right. And is, Jim, the silence from, I know the Deputy President came back from Colombia. Sorry, I just remembered Tigers. So he came back from Colombia and he posted, the first thing is he posted this tweet and he said, you know, you cannot talk to the electorate with such arrogance. Edwin Sifuna was like, hold my beer. You cannot be the one telling us I mean, it's the pot calling the kettle black. But then the president has been very quiet. Are we being managed? Is Moses Kuria actually speaking what the president and the deputy president cannot say out loud, because they're the ones who have repeatedly been telling us the economy is stable? And then cost of fuel goes up, Eurobond is due, and maybe vitu havingiani, so maybe the dog that is barking has an owner.
But you guys in the media even know that more than the rest of us. The last time Moses Kuria was attacking the media, who are the people who came to his defense more than anything? The president himself took time from the rally to just address the media on, you people keep attacking me, now who will defend me? Now you're asking me to defend you. So you know that Moses's bad mouth is protected, is and properly oiled and salivated by others. Like we keep saying, if you see a dog barking, they are owners. I know he said Halwale has masters, but he also has masters, and we know that he speaks on their behalf a lot of times, and they will not touch him, because every administration needs, you need a foul, a loose mouth, a loose cannon. Every administration needs someone who can say the most ridiculous thing that we are all thinking, but nobody is courageous enough to say. You have such characters in the opposition. There are things that Raila might not want to say, but the foul-mouthed characters within Azimio who will do it. And so even within the administration, because of the dignity of certain positions, and I think the only problem was if Moses was given maybe the role of Malala, of just showing up in cabinet without any portfolio, that would have made sense. But here you've made him the Minister of Trade and Investment, Minister of MITI, right? And is his Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI. Kama waziri wa MITI. Ideally, everywhere.
He's not lying though.
Guys, that is
I can pull it up.
Those are the initials of his ministry.
Here it is.
MITI, there, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. So, Waziri wa MITI, Moses Kuria. He interfaces a lot with the international community. He is almost a brand ambassador for Magical Kenya. He is most of the time supposed to be the first or second face that investors see when they come into this country when he goes out there. And then you have a minister who talks the way he talks, who no one holds with any kind of regard, with any zero skills on diplomacy, and just the ability to be, a bit more measured. I think he forgets sometimes, like Nurdin is saying, that he's still the Gatundu Member of Parliament, and forgets that he's now a cabinet secretary.
All right.
And the president, I think we have seen in his visits in the United States, we have seen the CS, Waziri wa Miti wa Ukweli. We have seen the real one.
Yeah.
We have seen the real one, and perhaps Moses has gotten the 411, and he's just preparing himself that should things go the way that everyone thinks that they're going, that he will be fired. But the only thing that we keep asking is, where is he being fired for? Incompetence? No. He's being fired for chapter, one of leadership and integrity. There's that chapter of the and there are certain things that are expected of leaders. Of course, majority of our leaders fail that threshold, but I think he's failing too publicly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gashri, because you're talking about the US. Ruto and Rigathi, this was yesterday, what Nurdin you're referencing. The headline, Star, Ruto and Rigathi spent 1.4 billion shillings on travel in 9 months. President said he inherited an economy in shambles. Fixing it would be painful, but he's trying to address the global financial, the inequalities. You talked about inequalities, the inequalities of the global financial architecture. But which reminds me of Tunenda, Haiti.
Yeah.
We are going to solve Haiti's problems.
But
yes, Gashri, not that it's a bad thing. I mean, we must be global leaders.
We must. Really?
Gashri, have we lost the plot? because it seems to me that really what is preoccupying either those in the opposition or in government is succession, as Nurdin put it. You know, Rigathi Gachagua is the one who introduced this whole concept of shareholding, and this tussle in the Ministry of Water has been framed in that way, that Kikuyu Kalenjin, you know, type thing. When Rigathi Gachagua goes to a place, when they go for these interdenominational prayer services, and they go to Narok, he calls all the people from all the Maasais in government, and he says, you see, we have looked out for your interests. If you want more, then you know who to vote for, who to support in 2027. If you want, we have the Interior PS going to Nyanza. He says, if you want development, then you must align, right? So, inakaa serikali kuna nafasi nyingi kujaza hivi. But we are told that the current expenditure, the projections have gone higher by Julian Zamboko. Julian Zamboko, I trust him implicitly, is a business and technology editor, Nation Media Group. He tells us they have, the current expenditure has gone higher than what was passed in the budget. This is 80%, over 86% on account of salaries. This is the same administration that told us in a couple of months the dollar is going, the exchange rate will go down to 120, which they found when they took over. They told us bei ya gas, cylinder ya gas itashuka, itafika 300, between 300 500.
Lakini mtungi.
Mtungi sio mtungi yenyewe. What else? Which other promises am I forgetting? So there have been all these assurances that everything is okay, relax, we have everything in hand. But looking at some of the headlines, even on the Eurobond today, there seems to be some disagreement in how to handle that within government. Have we lost? Are we focused on the wrong things?
I think we are focused on the wrong thing. And to use colloquial language, there's no way KK is beating the allegations. These allegations are just, there's no way for them to avoid this. But nonetheless, there's this culture, this concept of fear-mongering by politicians, and especially those in government, and creating a situation that, you know, they feed this narrative to the electorate that that politics is a do or die situation, that if you do not toe the line, if you do not vote for us, we're going to punish you by ensuring your area is not developed, by ensuring you do not get the services that you are entitled to. So to a certain extent, yes, I believe the KK government has lost the plot. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, have they really lost the plot, or do they now realize that there's nothing much they can do? They probably didn't have a plan from the get-go.
They had a plan. You didn't see the plan?
It's actually called the plan.
Yeah.
It's called the plan.
They did not have a plan. Those of us in politics understand. So you see how they are going about their business, how they are operating. This modus operandi of theirs it's like they don't have a plan. They're just going to campaign and politic and fearmonger and create crisis after crisis until 2027. But nonetheless, again, I go back to, as my brother says, there's room for hope. Hopefully. And I think William Ruto has a very good chance if he's willing to comply with Chapter 6 of the Constitution, if he's willing to ensure that his agents, his fellow colleagues in the politicking space within Kenya Kwanza are able to toe the line and able to, you know, deliver services. It's not too much to ask. There are blueprints, there are civil servants, there are resources. I think it's a lie when they keep saying that, you know, there was this, we came in, the coffers did not have anything, but then they're expanding our expenditure. The wage bill is just, you know, out of hand as we speak. He just needs to work. Stop politicking, stop giving us stories. We don't want those stories ajaba. Get to work. Simple.
Okay. So we keep being told that it will be painful, right? To get the country back on the right track will be painful. But Nurdin says, sisi tunaambiwa tukaze mshipi. Hata washatoa mshipi hata. But that's their position. But and we need to take a break. But when we come back, Kidi, and can we even look to the opposition to help us? Because they seem, even then, they seem preoccupied with succession. You have Raila Odinga's brother saying Opiyo Wandayi would make a great successor. People up in arms like, Allah, what are you saying? And then they read the cards like this. I saw some editorial cartoon, Raila has 6th cards reading 6 behind his back. Raila the 6th. So now everybody is like, alive, this guy is running for a 6th time, even at Tujipange. Yes. So everybody is trying to position themselves on the other side of this break.
When you're finally released from pain. That moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Get ready to tantalize your taste buds and embark on a culinary journey with Pishi Bomba, the ultimate cooking show that brings the flavors of the world right into your living room. Tune in this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with me, Claire Karatu, for a mouth-watering adventure. Pishi Bomba. Cook, eat, enjoy.
Pishi Bomba in association with Ajab Home Baking Flour.
Enjoy cooking your favorite meals with Ajab and freestyle your way to deliciousness. It's easy to knead, easy to roll, and quick to prepare. Ajab Home Baking Flour, the flour that does more.
Hey yo, what's going on? Wrong is VP, it's the trendsetter right here. What it is, what it do, what it does. So let me ask you guys, where would you be on a Friday night? That's why we bring you the Friday night party, a Friday night experience by yours truly, Joseph Trends right here, the trendsetter Ndani Nation FM, that is 96.3 Nairobi, where good music lives. Remember, we're bringing you everything celebrity gossip. Everything hot, anything that is trending, you're gonna be catching it right here, live and direct. Le Général Dangote. Tufanye like it every Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Twende kazi.
Geriatric population is patients above the age of 65 years. They are a group of patients who we want to screen for certain conditions. For example, we want to do cancer screenings on them. We want to screen them for signs of early dementia.
What is, the biggest challenge, the biggest issues that you see mostly on geriatrics?
As you age, your muscles become weaker, your bones become weaker. Many other diseases accompany old age.
We tend sometimes to also neglect our older family members or older patients, and sometimes that also stems from caretaker fatigue.
Caregivers themselves, and this is from a geriatrics point of view, do they know the needs of the geriatrics?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because in some settings we have some caregivers who are trained. Others are just working there because they want an income.
You're throwing money down the drain.
How? On these cleaning products? Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilets.
Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
Following the gazettement of Two Rivers as a private, services-focused special economic zone, the first one of the kind in Kenya, there is no better time to own a home at Two Rivers than now. Text the word Cascadia to 22365.
So this is the video I was making reference to earlier, and the NYS graduates starting up for KDF recruitment, and this is courtesy of the Star. So I've Nomba Ruhusa. Thousands of former national youth service officers Monday showed up in their thousands at the Embakasi garrison with the prospect of being absorbed into the Kenya Defence Forces. KDF announced the recruitment on September 16th while releasing the shortlist of prospective specialist officer cadets and tradesmen and women. Videos shared online showed a massive turnout of ex-NYS officers at the Embakasi garrison to scramble for the limited slots available to join the disciplined forces. So, yeah, short of a coup, as you've seen in where is it called? In, let me just head back. There we were. Short of a coup, Kidimwaga, as we've seen in the Sahel and Central Africa, where there has been a sense of the political establishment has not been people-centric. And of course, it's complicated. There are issues to do with the French and colonization, neocolonialism, and the like. But how these people and their interests, how do you get their interest prioritized in the current political setup?
Olive, you see, previously, the previous administration had what was called the subsidy program. Of course, when the new administration came in, and as my co-panelist, one of my co-panelists observed, is that this administration made the idea of subsidy, even the word subsidy, sound so bad, and they told us that they were focusing on production. I am one of the people, of course, who said that let us give government time, because I legitimately believed that if let us give this administration time to see how that will pan out. A year down the line, clearly, as much as we are reporting bumper harvest, but you see the cost of living is not about maize in isolation. So that clearly we have missed the point. We have missed the mark. The cost of living still remains very high. The tax regime still is not favorable both to households, to SMEs, and to even corporates. With the job loss we were talking about of the economy shedding off 80,000 jobs, of course, has come with a lot of challenges in the populace. So 1 year down the line, again, the cabinet, which of course is the highest decision-making organ, is not inspiring a lot of confidence. And my brother has made the joke we're laughing at here, that Waziri Wamiti has failed to appreciate the enormity of the tasks that rests on his shoulders. And that points largely to how the government is operating. So that even if the president is having good intentions, as we want to believe that he has good intentions, but the people he has hired to work for and with him are clearly sabotaging him, or they are just entirely clueless. For instance, the remarks from the Office of the Economic Council is less than inspiring. We should have actually been told by the Office of the Economic Council on how their interventions are turning around the economy. The president could be doing a lot of things, but we are pleading with the president that focus just on one thing and deliver it to us.
Yeah.
If we can bring the cost of living down, if we can have people live in dignity, if we can remove the stress from families, such that families don't break up on account of diminished income, then we would be in a better state. if there is only one thing we are pleading with the president, that forget everything else, fix the economy. But then the other question was, is the opposition an alternative? Olive, in a pure presidential system, when a country is in a crisis like we are now, we should have seen a bipartisan commitment to resolving our problems. The cost of living, both sides have missed the point by the river. The question of national unity, both sides have missed the point by the river. Because while Kenya Kwanza, for a long time, have told us that the government is shareholding, that it is the usual duopoly, the opposition has also attempted to, bastardize the government on account that if you associate with, you are seen associating, in close proximity with the officials of the government, that in itself is construed to mean that you have defected from your party and therefore you are fit for expulsion. So the question is, can we as a country for a moment engender a sane, sedate political environment where people, in spite of coming from different political persuasions, can come together in times of crisis as now, forge a common way forward, agree that this is what we must do, and do it. We should have seen pieces of legislations in the National Assembly and in the Senate that are seeking to arrest the spiraling high cost of living. But that has not happened. So, and again, back to your question, if opposition is an alternative, I would say that the opposition as presently constituted does not inspire even a wave of confidence to any young person in this country. Correct. Thank you.
Yeah. Nuruddin, the other day we had this story. Chiloba suspended as the Director General of the Communications Authority of Kenya. And if we are to believe the information that was provided, the authority called for his suspension, or rather those who compiled the report, following an audit of their mortgage scheme. They said one, you remember he was Chilobe in, was it the 2017 yes. election? Now Chilobae. But yeah, that he abused his office in the sense that instead of, so the scheme covers, I think, 1 acre properties. He submitted for a loan for a 7 acre property that the monies, the property was overvalued at 25 million, but the government valuers said the actual value is closer to 16 million. The monies were paid into his. So the person he was allegedly buying the property from gave instructions on payment instructions, and turns out the company to which they were paying the money is registered to Chiloba. He has, of course, denied all of this, and he has said he's being fought because he's fighting corruption at the Communication Authority of Kenya. If this is just a taste of the excesses that David Ndii spoke about, and remember the famous interview he did with Wahiga Mwaura. What does it say?
You see, first and foremost, if he survives that, he has 9 lives like a cat, from being Chilobe to where he is today. Secondly,
actually, look at this. I'm fired up, sucking benefits
yes.
From IEBC.
Yes.
Then here he is at the Communication Authority of Kenya. I see the phone and suspension CA, and then I will be back. New posts.
Exactly, that's what I said. So at the end of the day, what we're seeing isn't new. David Ndii has spoken about government excesses, how money is being, what did he say? Money is being misused. And head of public service talked about corruption the other day. But now he was telling us, and this is where we let us, like the citizens, to do. It's in your government. So you sort it out. Why are you telling us? We know it's there. It's just that we don't have evidence, but obviously we know it's there. We can clearly see. So at the end of the day, the sad reality in this Chiloba saga, let me call it a saga, is because the Minister for ICT has come on record and said that he has not received any official communication. But how would he, if he's in assemble? That aside. So at the end of the day, it tells us about this government. They call it Serikali ya Oga. Now the problem is, he's been setting up Wi-Fi in market.
Wi-Fi.
Now at the end of the day, this is they call this government organ, one government approach. So you can wake up today, you're fired. Tomorrow you are revoked somewhere. You know, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of doing things in a topsy-turvy kind of way. And, you know, this makes those of us who are living in this country and are young, you know, you get to have palpitations. You're wondering where your country is going. And that leads to us have our heart beating like the time clock of a chime clock, you know. So at the end of the day, Jim, don't worry. At the end of the day, the questions we're asking, does the government have a plan? Are you going towards your plan? Are you actualizing the plan? Or do you wake up in the morning and decide, you know what, we're a poster, we're poster boys? The cartoon there is a very sad cartoon because, no, the one you just left.
Oh, okay.
The cartoon there is a very sad cartoon because whose interests is the president serving? Is it the West? Is it IMF?
Imepotea.
Is it the World Bank? Or is it Kenyans? Because we cannot be poster boys of the West during the day and Pan-Africanists at night. We need to have a stand. We talk about sending our police officers to Haiti. That thing sits so bad with me, with the level of crime in this country. And you know, in Haiti, the guys who are causing those problems there are not just your normal magas, some of those guys are paramilitary. So you're sending our cops who can't even deal with Pokot to go and fight guys who are well trained in Haiti.
Wait. Why are you undermining?
No, I'm just being honest. You know, we have to be honest. Because if they could, why would we send the army there? So at the end of the day, we have to be serious. And the government, you know, there is this craze of fighting for global acceptance. We are busy in and out. You know, like the president is like a traveler. You know, he would be a very perfect brand ambassador for one of those travel agencies we have in this country. He comes in, launches something, is in a conference, board and lodging, ametoka, he's gone somewhere. And that's why you see 1.4 billion in travel. So at the end of the day, we have to be serious. It's 1 year down the line. Promises that were meant to be achieved have not been achieved. When will they be achieved? Or are they waiting for towards elections, then they lower the prices of things and tell you, by the way, you see, we met a dilapidated economy. You suffered for 2 to 3 years. As we are suffering, someone has now moved from an LX 600 to the 2022 Range Rover. And he's telling us the dilapidated economy. His office was renovated at 1.4 or 1.3 billion, courtesy of the letter sent by Kuria to Parliament. So you ask yourself, which country are we living in? Who is lying to us? But clearly there's money. But where the money is being spent, it is not a necessity. So at the end of the day, you have to wake up as Kenyans and decide whether you want to be in this charade or you want to take matters into your own hands. The question on opposition, we do have an opposition courtesy of the fact that someone lost. Courtesy of those who are in government and those who are meant to play a role that they call opposition. But the Constitution doesn't have something like opposition. That's what they're trying to put in the Constitution right now. Because you have either leader of majority or minority. So they're trying to come up with that office, which I support. But I don't look at it as a Raila office, even though we are being told he has one more bullet. Risasi ya sita. Na hii ya sita itachukua kiti ya sita. So at the end of the day, we have to look beyond him, one or another. There are those who are talking about succession. But you see, the young people in this country have to wake up and realize that if you're going to wait for your leaders to always speak for you, or you're going to be lost. Yeah. Personally, I lost hope in Parliament. I don't have a Parliament. I don't even consider myself a member of Parliament, and I have one. Because I know they could care less about what I would want. Just look at how things are run in that house. Look at how they vote. Look at the bills that come there. If they're people-centric, we wouldn't be having the issues that we have. So you have to rise up to the occasion and rise beyond one, ethnic voting. Because if you vote as per your ethnic divide or as per your faith, your education is useless. You have to ask yourself, what does this person offer me? That's why I said voting is more or less about interest. What interest is person X granting you as opposed to person Y? Like, you know, you're just voting because, you know, this area is meant to be this party. So you vote, now is it 9-piece, not 6 anymore. So you vote an entire 9-piece going up. Any clown that is in that party just gets it. And then when they get into office, you start ranting on Twitter and Facebook. You cannot be doing the same thing every single election period, expecting different results. So we have to, in as much as we talk about how leaders end up in office and they don't serve us, you have the power of putting them there. Jim just talks about recall. Why haven't we ever recalled a member of parliament, for example? I'd love to do that. I'm actually thinking about it right now. Because at the end of the day, you look at the interests they serve. Most of them forget that even if you're in Kenya Kwanza, you have an oversight role. Again, wanakuambia hiyo kazi oversight ni Azimio. So you ask yourself, you're never in parliament once, so you don't legislate. You don't do oversight. So wewe tu, it's following either the president, the deputy, or Madividi, who's waiting for his seat to be enshrined in the constitution because he's not safe. There's a court case, he's not safe. So you ask yourself, when will they ever work for you? So it's 1 year down the line, we're waiting to see. I am giving the benefit of the doubt. Already I'm in doubt. There's no more benefit. I'm in doubt, so whatever comes, I'll just be like, I knew it. But they have time to change. Speaking about the issue of NYS as I conclude, the easiest way to help the young men and women in this country is courtesy of a ministry held by or led by one person called Ababu Namwamba. The day he realizes that he can help reduce the issue of unemployment, courtesy of arts and sports, would be a better country. I've just seen right now the president has signed something with NBA. Now I'm a fan of basketball, that is good. They're trying to inculcate it into schools. My question is, I used to play football back in school. I don't play anymore. My question is, after school, what happens? That's a talent that is never tapped. And that is the question, because we always talk about how they were supposed to take another promise. Ababu Namwamba to take golf to schools. I don't know how that, if it ever happened. So at the end of the day, do you have a plan on how you nurture talent? Because you just can't start it and then once it's there, it's ready to be nurtured. You leave it. Okay. So let us have a solution where we have a plan, implementation, and fulfilling of the plan.
All right. Jim, he's mentioned the plan. And you've talked about the NBA. I also got the same news alert just now. But there's the idea with the housing plan is to create jobs. So clearly, there's an acknowledgement that we have an unemployment issue. Kazi ni kazi, we've been told. The idea with the reforms around NHIF have to do with, I assume, I know there's a fear that this will just create more avenues to steal, but is to make it such that you don't have to go bankrupt when you get a health issue as a family. What am I forgetting? There was housing. I'm forgetting something else. Subsidy of fertilizer. These industrial parks, you know, move us from a consuming nation to one that produces, and that in the long term will cure our issues with the exchange rate and all of that. Do we need to just give it time?
Like any proper planner, you know, would tell you is things take time. Good things take time. You have to conceptualize ideas. You have to test them. Some of them will work. Some of them will fail. And then you improve upon that. It's just, you know, as you're doing programming or as you're doing any kind of planning, you test, you go in a place and say, we thought this would work. Unfortunately, it does not work. We want to test again something different. And that happens when you have, when there is an actual plan that people can look at and say, we are heading somewhere. I'm a big fan of football. And sometimes teams hire new managers and new coaches. And they say, you know, we are rebuilding, there's a project, believe in the project. And when these teams start to play, as a fan, you start saying, okay, I see what we're trying to do. I see the style of play. I see the identity we're trying to form as a team. And one time you lose 7-0, you lose 9-0. And like, we see the idea that's coming. And ultimately you trust the process, and a few years down the line, the process works, you win a couple of leagues. The unfortunate problem with the thing in Kenya right now is we are not seeing the identity. 1 year down the line is we are not seeing that identity. It is not clear what direction we are actually going. And so we're being asked to trust in a process that is opaque, that is ambiguous, a process that almost seems non-existent. We are being asked to close our eyes And those of us, because for instance, this is an accountability platform that we're using here. Those of us who are trying to do that work of accountability, we are being told to keep quiet and not to criticize and not to ask questions and saying these things takes time. But we cannot blindly just follow people who we assume are now drunk with power, people who we think have been out in the cold for so long and are now looking for cover and blankets and everything to get warm. Because that's what is happening. It needs time, but there's actually no evidence that there's a plan in motion to get things done. Everything seems to be done haphazardly. Because when you're talking, for instance, about housing, they've spoken about the number of units. And every time you speak to the PS and the CS, there are always new numbers. There are always new metrics. There are always... Everybody's contradicting themselves. And that's how you know that we're almost, it's just deals. Everyone is thinking about the next deal that we can sign. What's the next deal that we can sign? And we are signing so many deals in the process. You have a president who's riding the Pan-African bus, rhetoric bus, right? And he's become this Pan-Africanist, and now he's the darling of everybody. You know, Biden loves him and mentions him in his... Be very careful when the West starts praising your president, good people. Be very careful. The last time the West loved any president in Africa, that country was actually extracted. Those countries were extracted. The last time that the West loved any president, they gave us a president. They gave us a constitution. That is the last time they loved a president here. The last time they hated any president, that president was very progressive. And you can ask our friends in Burkina Faso, you can ask our friends in the Zaire and the rest of the continent. So be very careful. When your president becomes being the darling of the West, there's a chance that you've been signed over to the capitalistic tendencies of the West. So I do not think that this government, they might have had an idea about how to run an economy, but I think when they got in, they realized it's not as easy, and nobody's willing to put in the work to get this fixed.
But you know, there are some who will argue that there was substantial looting. You know, when Raila Odinga announced, you know, there was that impression that hii kitu ni ya baba. So when he announced his cabinet, and those who were already in cabinet realized they are not factored into that cabinet, that there was substantial looting. Those are the reports you've been reading about in these tell-alls.
No,
right?
but unfortunately, they are not. They are now in government. They are now in government. If there's anyone who looted, and you're saying that's why we are in as a country, then you have the DPP. In fact, a new one that you have appointed. Why aren't you bringing any of those cases to court? It's just hearsay, scapegoating. That's been the story of this government. They bring in a hearsay, they give us a nice, rousing story, we run with that story, we jump on top of tables, they irritate us here and there, we get angry, then they incite the opposition takes us to the streets, we get angry, they scapegoat here, and they're going to do that for the next 4 years, unfortunately.
All right. Your last word, Gashui, you know, is it just is it just a communication problem, that there is actually a lot happening behind the scenes, we just don't hear about it?
I don't think it's a communication problem. Well, if they wanted to communicate, they would communicate. They have all the machinery, they have the requisite people to do the communication. I don't think it's a breakdown in communication. I don't think it's framing of language that is the problem. I think it's just a circus they are running, and it's unfortunate. I'd initially said that I don't think they had a plan when they were coming on board, and I stick to that. I still don't believe they actually had a plan of what they were going to do for these 5 years in terms of executing and operationalizing the government and delivering on services. But that said, I believe there is still hope, and I would really want to see William Ruto just settle down, avoid the unnecessary travels. We have already spent 1.4 billion, and I would like to see the statistics on his carbon prints in the air. Tulia, fanya kazi, deliver on the citizens. We have an issue as it is. We have the burgeoning numbers of unemployed young people. My brother Kidi has spoken about the threat to family in the country. We have so many young men who are unable to sustain themselves, to sustain families. Yesterday, we were commemorating 10 years since the Westgate attack. And when you have young men idling, you have a problem with extremism, radicalization, people inadvertently ending up in crime. We have an issue of food security, something that I don't see them constantly address as a matter of national security, which I keep bringing up. We don't see them talking about educational reforms. My brother Hagai has talked about investing in arts, investing in sports. We have so many opportunities where young people can be involved in tree planting, in agriculture across this country, especially with the 7,000 men who showed up for recruitment. There are so many places that these young men can be involved, engaged in nation building and economic empowerment. But does the government want to engage them?
You know, I just remembered, speaking of youth, although now the probably don't technically qualify, Sakaja and Babuino. Anyway, Kirimwaga, your last word.
You have better youth leaders here.
Yes.
An advocate of the High Court,
yes.
program officer, so yeah. Olive, we were, this administration said that it wants to focus on production. Production only makes sense in an export-led economy. But to date, we have not seen a fundamental departure from the import substitution-led economy that we have relied on for so long. So for instance, when we say that we wanted to focus on production, production would only have made sense if it was, it would be in a manner that we are then able to take advantage of our competitive advantages in the region, relying on, say, the African Free Trade Area and other markets, to ensure that we have got, you know, a proportionate chunk of export to take out there and earn foreign exchange. If anything, that would have helped us ease the pressure on the dollar. But to this extent, we haven't, and that is part of the communication we expected to hear from the Economic Council. But that has not come out. If anything, they are telling us that it is going to, itakuwa mbaya zaidi. Subsequently, we have seen the Cabinet Secretary for MITI moving around, launching industrial parks. We have not had a comprehensive communique from both the ministry and the government generally on how these industrial parks are going to ensure that we take advantage of our competitive advantages in the region and globally to ensure that we have an economy that is export-led, that would then, one, create jobs locally, two, help stabilize the dollar, and three, generally bring the high cost of living down.
Okay.
To an extent, I want to believe that there is work being done by this government, but it is also self-sabotaging, or these people are simply sabotaging the president. You know, we are in a unique position as a country. The uniqueness is here that that we are being led by a president who is schooled and young, and you don't want to say a lot, because you know at least two of the five presidents we have had would be what you would call functionally illiterate. Then there were two of the five of the presidents we've had were in office when either they were too old or too sick to take advantage of their administration, and therefore third parties who did not have the mandate of the people took advantage of government and repurposed it towards serving private ends. The president is young, and unlike, say, President Kibaki, who came into office when he was sickling, he has an opportunity to take charge of his cabinet. I mean, I have not seen a cabinet as indisciplined as this one, where cabinet secretaries wake up in the morning and issue edicts as if we are living in pre-2010 era. So we want to see a president who is in charge of his government.
Okay.
We want to see ministers knowing that there is repercussions when they speak to Kenyans as if they are oblivious of the positions they hold in society.
All right, thank you, Kidi. I'll have to stop you there. Nurdin Hagai, just one last one.
Yes.
Last one,
Yes.
don't take last one.
Okay.
So when you read headlines like this, revenue growth stagnates despite increased tax rates. Control of budget flags 15.3 billion shillings irregular spending by the Treasury. CBK governor speaking on how last week's pump price review complicates monetary policy. The expectation was that fuel inflation would soften from 14% to 10% starting October once the base for the wind down of fuel subsidies kicks in. And then finally here, Bilokero shared this article. Treasury seeks additional 150 billion shillings to pay salaries. When you read these headlines and these stories, maybe we need to stop making noise about Benihin.
You know, by the way,
that we need prayers.
Yes, you know, we actually need government-sponsored prayers. You know, at the end of the day, they say when your hole, stop digging. And clearly they told us the economy is bad, it's complicated, and you're still digging. So unless they stop digging, we'll see this every other day. And since I have the time to end the show, I will just say, irrespective of who you think you are, because you've been a state officer, let us just have decorum in how you carry yourself, have some empathy, treat Kenyans with respect, and give them some hope at the end of the day.
Right.
And having decorum isn't such a hard thing to do. So let's just carry ourselves with dignity so that you actually dignify the office that you have. Otherwise, we don't need you there.
Okay, so we will have to end the show there. I thank you for your grace, my dear director. Let me talk you. Anyway, my name is Olive Barrows, Nurdin Hagai, advocate of the High Court, Kidi Mwaga, convener, Interparties Youth Forum, Gashri Kariukishi, many hats, advocate of the High Court, Director of SAWIKE, National Planning Coordinator, Interparties Youth Forum, and Jim India, political analyst. Good morning.